Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, the most powerful president in the world. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin's journey to the pinnacle of Russian politics is a tale of ambition, resilience, and a keen sense of opportunity. Born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, Putin's early life was marked by the hardships of post-war Soviet Union. His father, Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin, served in the Soviet Navy during World War II, while his mother, Maria Ivanovna Putina, worked in a factory. Growing up in a communal apartment, young Vladimir learned the values of discipline and hard work from an early age. Putin's academic journey was unremarkable until he discovered judo, a sport that would play a significant role in shaping his character. The discipline and strategic thinking required in judo resonated with Putin, and he excelled in it, eventually earning a black belt. This early experience with martial arts not only instilled in him a sense of physical and mental toughness, but also provided a framework for his approach to challenges later in life. After completing his studies at Leningrad State University with a degree in law in 1975, Putin joined the KGB, the Soviet Union's main security agency. His career in the KGB was relatively low profile, involving various administrative roles and a stint in East Germany. However, it was during this period that Putin honed his skills in intelligence and gathered valuable insights into the workings of power and politics. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was a turning point for Putin, as it was for many Russians. Returning to a drastically changed Russia, Putin found himself in a new and uncertain world. He began working for Anatoly Sobchak, the mayor of St. Petersburg, as an advisor on international affairs. This role marked Putin's entry into the world of politics, providing him with a platform to showcase his abilities and establish crucial connections. Putin's work with Sobchak earned him a reputation as a competent and loyal aide, traits that caught the attention of higher authorities. In 1996, he moved to Moscow to take up a position in the presidential administration under Boris Yeltsin. Over the next few years, Putin steadily climbed the ranks, thanks to his administrative acumen and his ability to navigate the often treacherous waters of Russian politics. In 1998, Putin was appointed head of the FSB, the successor to the KGB. This position gave him control over Russia's internal security and intelligence operations, further solidifying his power base. His tenure at the FSB was marked by efforts to strengthen the agency and crack down on organized crime, which had flourished in the chaotic years following the Soviet Union's dissolution. The turning point in Putin's rise came in 1999, when Yeltsin, facing declining health and political pressure, appointed him as prime minister. Putin's appointment was initially met with skepticism, given his relatively low public profile. However, a series of decisive actions soon changed that perception. The apartment bombings in Moscow and other cities, attributed to Chechen separatists, provided Putin with an opportunity to assert his leadership. He responded with a fierce military campaign in Chechnya, which bolstered his image as a strong and determined leader. As Yeltsin's health continued to deteriorate, he saw in Putin a reliable successor who could ensure stability and protect his interests. On December 31, 1999, in a surprise move, Yeltsin announced his resignation and named Putin as acting president. This marked the beginning of a new era in Russian politics, with Putin swiftly consolidating power and winning the presidential election in March 2000. Putin's early presidency was characterized by efforts to restore order and stability to a country still reeling from the chaotic 1990s. He implemented reforms aimed at strengthening the central government, curbing the power of the oligarchs, and revitalizing the economy. These measures, combined with a rise in global oil prices, contributed to a period of significant economic growth and improved living standards for many Russians. However, Putin's methods of governance also raised concerns. His approach involved a centralization of power, a crackdown on political dissent, and increased control over the media. While these actions helped consolidate his authority, they also drew criticism from those who saw them as undermining democratic principles and human rights. As Putin's presidency progressed, he continued to navigate the complexities of Russian and global politics with a blend of pragmatism and assertiveness. His ability to maintain a firm grip on power, despite numerous challenges, has made him a formidable figure on the world stage. Understanding the rise of Vladimir Putin is crucial to comprehending the dynamics of modern Russia and the enduring influence he wields both domestically and internationally. A new era, Putin's early presidency. The dawn of Vladimir Putin's presidency in 2000 marked the beginning of a transformative period for Russia. After a decade of economic turmoil, political instability, and the loss of international stature under Boris Yeltsin, many Russians were desperate for change. Putin, with his promise of stability and strength, appeared as the right leader for the time. His early years in office were characterized by significant reforms and decisive actions aimed at rebuilding the nation's confidence and restoring its global influence. One of Putin's first major challenges was to address the economic woes that had plagued Russia throughout the 1990s. The country was still reeling from the financial crisis of 1998, which had led to a sharp devaluation of the ruble and widespread economic hardship. To tackle these issues, Putin embarked on a series of economic reforms designed to stabilize the economy and attract foreign investment. Key to this effort was his appointment of experienced technocrats to key positions in his government, who were tasked with implementing policies to foster economic growth. Putin's economic strategy was multifaceted. He worked to create a more favorable business environment by reducing bureaucratic red tape, combating corruption, and enforcing property rights. Additionally, he sought to streamline the tax system, making it simpler and more predictable. One of the most notable reforms was the introduction of a flat income tax rate of 13%, which was aimed at boosting compliance and stimulating economic activity. At the same time, Putin leveraged Russia's vast natural resources, particularly its oil and gas reserves, to drive economic growth. The rising global oil prices during the early 2000s provided a significant windfall for the Russian economy, enabling the government to pay off debt, build up foreign exchange reserves, and invest in infrastructure. This period of economic prosperity helped to improve living standards for many Russians and bolstered Putin's popularity. Another crucial aspect of Putin's early presidency was his effort to reassert the authority of the central government. The 1990s had seen the emergence of powerful regional leaders and oligarchs who wielded significant influence and often acted independently of the federal government. Putin moved swiftly to curtail their power, bringing regional governors and oligarchs under the Kremlin's control. He achieved this through a combination of legal reforms, political maneuvering, and, in some cases, direct confrontation. A key moment in this power struggle was the arrest of Mikhail Khodorkovsky, one of Russia's richest oligarchs and the head of the oil company Yukos. In 2003, Khodorkovsky's arrest on charges of fraud and tax evasion was widely seen as a message to other oligarchs that their influence would be curtailed if they did not align with the Kremlin's agenda. The dismantling of Yukos and the subsequent redistribution of its assets to state-controlled entities further consolidated the government's control over the strategic energy sector. In addition to these domestic reforms, Putin sought to re-establish Russia's position on the international stage. He pursued a foreign policy, restoring Russia's influence and countering what he perceived as Western encroachment in the post-Soviet space. This approach was evident in his response to the NATO intervention in Kosovo in 1999 and the subsequent expansion of NATO into Eastern Europe, which he viewed as direct threats to Russian security. Putin's early foreign policy was marked by a pragmatic approach to relations with the West. He initially sought to improve ties with the United States and Europe, recognizing the importance of these relationships for Russia's economic modernization and integration into the global economy. However, this pragmatism was coupled with a determination to protect Russia's strategic interests and maintain its sovereignty. This balancing act was reflected in his handling of the war in Chechnya, where he pursued a hardline military strategy while also seeking to rebuild the region through economic and social development programs. The early years of Putin's presidency also saw significant developments in the area of media and public opinion. Understanding the power of media in shaping public perception, Putin moved to exert greater control over Russia's media landscape. State control over major television networks was tightened, and independent media outlets faced increasing pressure and restrictions. This control over the media allowed the Kremlin to shape the narrative around key issues and maintain a positive image of Putin's leadership among the Russian populace. Putin's consolidation of power and his efforts to stabilize the economy and reassert Russia's global influence were largely successful in the early 2000s. His popularity soared, and he was re-elected in 2004 with a significant majority. However, these achievements were not without controversy. Critics argued that Putin's methods, particularly his suppression of political opposition and control over the media, undermined democratic principles and eroded civil liberties. Despite these criticisms, there was no denying that Putin's early presidency marked a period of significant transformation for Russia. The country emerged from the turmoil of the 1990s with a stronger economy, a more centralized and stable government, and a renewed sense of national pride. As Putin entered his second term, the stage was set for further consolidation of his power and the pursuit of his vision for Russia's future. The consolidation of power. As Vladimir Putin embarked on his second term as president in 2004, his focus shifted towards further consolidating his power and ensuring the longevity of his political system. The early successes of his first term had earned him widespread popularity and a mandate to pursue more ambitious reforms. However, this period also saw the emergence of significant challenges, both domestically and internationally, that would test Putin's leadership and resilience. One of the key strategies employed by Putin to consolidate his power was the strengthening of the vertical of power. This concept involved centralizing authority and ensuring that all levels of government were aligned with the Kremlin's directives. To achieve this, Putin implemented a series of administrative reforms aimed at increasing federal control over regional governments. He abolished the direct election of regional governors, replacing them with a system where governors were appointed by the president and confirmed by regional legislatures. This move effectively brought regional leaders under the direct influence of the Kremlin, reducing the potential for dissent and ensuring a unified approach to governance. In addition to centralizing political power, Putin sought to enhance the role of the United Russia Party, which became the dominant political force in the country. United Russia, closely associated with Putin, played a crucial role in maintaining political stability and ensuring legislative support for the president's agenda. The party's dominance in the State Duma allowed for the smooth passage of laws and reforms, further consolidating Putin's control over the political landscape. Another significant aspect of Putin's consolidation of power was his handling of the security and intelligence apparatus. Building on his background in the KGB, Putin placed a strong emphasis on strengthening Russia's security services. The FSB, the successor to the KGB, was given increased authority and resources, playing a central role in maintaining internal security and combating perceived threats to the state. This focus on security was evident in the government's response to terrorist attacks, such as the Beslan school siege in 2004, which underscored the need for a robust and vigilant security apparatus. Putin's approach to economic policy during his second term also reflected his desire to consolidate power and control. While he continued to pursue market-oriented reforms and encourage foreign investment, He also sought to increase state control over strategic sectors of the economy. This was particularly evident in the energy sector, where state-owned companies like Gazprom and Rosneft played a dominant role. The Kremlin's control over these key industries allowed it to wield significant influence, both domestically and internationally, using energy resources as a tool of diplomacy and geopolitical leverage. On the international front, Putin's second term was marked by a more assertive and confrontational foreign policy. The expansion of NATO into Eastern Europe, along with US plans for missile defense systems in the region, was perceived as a direct threat to Russian security. In response, Putin adopted a more aggressive stance, seeking to counterbalance Western influence and reassert Russia's role as a major global player. This assertiveness was evident in Russia's actions in its near abroad, including its support for separatist movements in Georgia and its opposition to Western-backed color revolutions in post-Soviet states. One of the most significant and controversial events of Putin's second term was the 2008 war with Georgia. The conflict, which erupted over the breakaway regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, highlighted the growing tensions between Russia and the West. Russia's military intervention and subsequent recognition of the independence of these regions drew international condemnation, but also demonstrated Putin's willingness to use military force to defend Russia's interests and assert its influence in its traditional sphere of influence. As Putin's second term came to an end in 2008, the question of succession loomed large. The Russian constitution prohibited him from serving more than 2 consecutive terms, prompting speculation about how he would navigate this limitation. In a strategic move, Putin endorsed Dmitry Medvedev, a loyal ally and former chief of staff, as his successor. Medvedev's election as president was widely seen as a continuation of Putin's policies, with Putin himself assuming the role of prime minister, thereby maintaining significant influence over the government. The Putin-Medvedev tandem, often referred to as the tandemocracy, was characterized by a close working relationship between the two leaders. While Medvedev occupied the presidency, Putin continued to play a crucial role in shaping policy and overseeing the government's operations. This arrangement allowed Putin to circumvent constitutional limits on presidential terms while retaining control over the political system. During Medvedev's presidency, there were some attempts at modernization and liberalization, particularly in the realm of economic policy and technological innovation. However, these efforts were largely overshadowed by the continuity of Putin's influence and the overarching focus on stability and control. The tandemocracy also faced significant challenges, including the global financial crisis of 2008-2009, which had a profound impact on the Russian economy. The crisis exposed vulnerabilities in the Russian economic model, highlighting the need for diversification and structural reforms. As the 2012 presidential election approached, it became increasingly clear that Putin intended to return to the presidency. In a move that surprised few, Medvedev announced that he would not seek re-election and endorsed Putin as the candidate for United Russia. Putin's subsequent victory in the 2012 election to his return to the presidency, signaling the continuation of his leadership and the further consolidation of his power. Putin's return to the presidency was met with a mix of public support and opposition. While many Russians continued to view him as a stabilizing force, there were also growing signs of discontent, particularly among the urban middle class and younger generations. Large-scale protests erupted in major cities, with demonstrators calling for greater political freedoms and an end to corruption. The government's response to these protests, which included crackdowns and increased repression, underscored the challenges Putin faced in maintaining his grip on power. As Putin embarked on his third term, the focus on consolidating power and addressing internal and external challenges remained central to his agenda. The period from 2012 onwards would see further developments in Russia's domestic policies, its international relations, and the enduring question of Putin's legacy. The consolidation of power during his early years in office set the stage for the subsequent chapters of his presidency, shaping the trajectory of modern Russia and its place in the world. The oligarchs and the Kremlin. The relationship between Vladimir Putin and Russia's oligarchs has been a defining aspect of his presidency, reflecting the broader struggle for power and control within the country. When Putin assumed office in 2000, the oligarchs wielded immense influence over the Russian economy and, by extension, its politics. These wealthy businessmen had amassed vast fortunes during the chaotic privatization of state assets in the 1990s, often leveraging their wealth to gain political leverage and shape government policy to their advantage. Putin's approach to the oligarchs was one of both confrontation and co-optation, as he sought to reassert state control and diminish their independent power. One of the earliest and most notable confrontations between Putin and the oligarchs involved Boris Berezovsky, a media magnate and one of the most influential figures of the Yeltsin era. Berezovsky had played a key role in Putin's rise to power, but their relationship quickly soured as Putin moved to centralize authority. In 2000, Berezovsky was forced to sell his stake in the Aut television network, and he eventually fled Russia, becoming a vocal critic of Putin from exile. This early clash signaled Putin's determination to curtail the political influence of the oligarchs and assert the supremacy of the state. The case of Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the head of Yukos, was perhaps the most high-profile and emblematic of Putin's strategy towards the oligarchs. Once the richest man in Russia, Khodorkovsky had built Yukos into one of the world's largest oil companies. However, his political ambitions and efforts to challenge the Kremlin's authority put him on a collision course with Putin. In 2003, Khodorkovsky was arrested on charges of fraud and tax evasion, and Yukos was subsequently dismantled, with its assets absorbed by state-controlled entities like Rosneft. Khodorkovsky's imprisonment served as a stark warning to other oligarchs. Their fortunes and freedom depended on their loyalty to the Kremlin. While Putin's crackdown on the oligarchs involved high-profile confrontations, it also included efforts to co-opt and integrate them into his system of governance. Many oligarchs who accepted the new rules of the game and demonstrated their loyalty to the Kremlin were allowed to retain their wealth and positions. In return, they were expected to support Putin's policies and contribute to his broader economic and political goals. This approach created a symbiotic relationship between the state and the oligarchs, with the latter becoming instruments of the former's agenda. The relationship between the Kremlin and the oligarchs was further cemented by the creation of state corporations in strategic sectors of the economy. These state-controlled entities, often led by Putin's close allies, played a key role in advancing the government's objectives while maintaining the appearance of private enterprise. Companies like Gazprom, Rosneft, and Rostec became crucial pillars of Putin's economic strategy, serving both as engines of growth and tools of political influence. The intertwining of state and private interests in these corporations exemplified the hybrid nature of Russia's political economy under Putin. The consolidation of state control over the economy also extended to the media sector, where Putin moved to curtail the influence of oligarchs and ensure favorable coverage of his administration. The Kremlin gained control over major television networks, which became instruments of state propaganda. Independent media outlets faced increasing pressure, with many being forced to shut down or adapt to a more compliant stance. The state's dominance over the media landscape allowed Putin to shape public perception and maintain a narrative of stability and progress. While Putin's approach to the oligarchs and the economy brought a degree of stability and order, it also had significant implications for Russia's political and economic landscape. The concentration of power in the hands of the state and a select group of loyalists stifled competition and innovation, creating an environment characterized by cronyism and corruption. The lack of transparency and accountability in state corporations often led to inefficiencies and mismanagement, undermining the long-term prospects for sustainable economic growth. Moreover, the intertwining of political and economic power under Putin's leadership raised concerns about the erosion of democratic institutions and the rule of law. The selective application of justice, as seen in the cases of Berezovsky and Khodorkovsky, highlighted the use of legal mechanisms to target political opponents and reinforce the Kremlin's authority. This politicization of the legal system had a chilling effect on political dissent and contributed to the broader trend of authoritarianism in Russia. Despite these challenges, Putin's ability to manage the oligarchs and maintain control over the economy contributed to his enduring popularity and political longevity. By reining in the excesses of the 1990s and presenting himself as a strong and decisive leader, he garnered significant support among the Russian populace. The improved economic conditions and the restoration of Russia's global standing further bolstered his legitimacy. As Putin's presidency continued, the relationship between the Kremlin and the oligarchs evolved, reflecting the changing dynamics of power and influence in Russia. The role of the oligarchs remained significant, but their fortunes were increasingly tied to their alignment with the state's priorities. This symbiotic relationship underscored the complexities of governance in modern Russia, where economic and political power were inextricably linked. The consolidation of power through the management of the oligarchs was a key element of Putin's broader strategy to maintain control and stability. It highlighted his pragmatic approach to leadership, combining elements of confrontation and co-optation to achieve his goals. Understanding this dynamic is crucial to comprehending the nature of Putin's rule and the intricate web of relationships that define contemporary Russian politics. Putin's economic policies. Vladimir Putin's economic policies have played a central role in shaping modern Russia, reflecting his broader goals of stability, growth, and state control. From the outset of his presidency, Putin has focused on revitalizing the Russian economy, which had been severely weakened by the chaos of the 1990s. His approach has combined elements of market-oriented reforms with a strong emphasis on state intervention in strategic sectors, creating a unique model of governance that balances economic pragmatism with political control. One of the key pillars of Putin's economic strategy has been the stabilization and growth of the Russian economy. Upon assuming office, Putin inherited a country grappling with the aftermath of the 1998 financial crisis, which had resulted in a sharp devaluation of the ruble, soaring inflation, and widespread economic hardship. To address these challenges, Putin and his economic team implemented a series of reforms aimed at stabilizing the economy and fostering growth. A crucial aspect of these reforms was the overhaul of Russia's tax system. In 2001, Putin introduced a flat income tax rate of 13%, replacing the previous progressive tax system. This move was designed to simplify the tax code, improve compliance, and reduce the informal economy. The flat tax rate, along with other tax reforms, contributed to an increase in tax revenues and helped stabilize public finances. In addition to tax reforms, Putin's government focused on reducing the country's debt burden and building up foreign exchange reserves. The surge in global oil prices during the early 2000s provided a significant boost to Russia's economy, enabling the government to pay off its debts and accumulate substantial reserves. This financial prudence helped insulate the Russian economy from external shocks and provided a buffer against future crises. Putin's economic policies also prioritized attracting foreign investment and improving the business environment. Efforts were made to streamline bureaucratic procedures, enhance property rights, and combat corruption, all aimed at making Russia a more attractive destination for investors. The government's investment in infrastructure, including transportation and energy, further supported economic development and growth. However, While market-oriented reforms were a key component of Putin's economic strategy, his approach also involved significant state intervention in strategic sectors. The energy sector, in particular, became a cornerstone of Russia's economic and geopolitical power. State-controlled companies like Gazprom and Rosneft played a dominant role in the oil and gas industry, allowing the Kremlin to exert influence both domestically and internationally. The state's control over the energy sector was not only an economic strategy, but also a tool of political leverage. Russia's vast energy resources, particularly its natural gas supplies, became a critical instrument in its foreign policy. The Kremlin used energy diplomacy to strengthen ties with key partners and exert pressure on neighboring countries, particularly those in Europe, that depended heavily on Russian gas. The centralization of economic power in the hands of the state was also evident in the creation of state corporations in other strategic industries, such as defense, aerospace, and technology. These state-controlled entities were tasked with advancing the government's economic and strategic objectives, often operating with significant autonomy and resources. While these corporations contributed to economic growth and technological development, they also reinforced the concentration of power and the blurring of lines between the state and private enterprise. Putin's economic policies had a profound impact on Russia's macroeconomic stability and growth. The country's GDP grew significantly during his first two terms, and living standards improved for many Russians. The rise in disposable incomes, coupled with increased consumer spending, contributed to a sense of economic recovery and optimism. This period of prosperity bolstered Putin's popularity and provided a strong foundation for his continued leadership. However, the reliance on oil and gas revenues also exposed vulnerabilities in the Russian economy. The lack of diversification and the dependence on energy exports made the economy susceptible to fluctuations in global oil prices. The 2008 global financial crisis and the subsequent drop in oil prices highlighted these vulnerabilities, leading to a contraction of the Russian economy and underscoring the need for structural reforms. Despite these challenges, Putin's economic policies continued to emphasize state control and strategic investments. The government launched initiatives to promote innovation and technological development, aiming to reduce dependence on energy exports and foster a more diversified economy. Projects like the Skolkovo Innovation Center and efforts to develop the Russian Far East reflected the government's commitment to long-term economic development and modernization. In addition to domestic economic policies, Putin's approach to international trade and investment played a crucial role in shaping Russia's economic trajectory. The country sought to strengthen economic ties with emerging markets, particularly in Asia, as part of its broader strategy to diversify trade partners and reduce reliance on the West. This shift was particularly evident in the growing economic partnership with China, which encompassed trade, investment, and energy cooperation. The imposition of Western sanctions in response to Russia's actions in Ukraine in 2014 posed significant challenges to the Russian economy. The sanctions targeted key sectors, including finance, energy, and defense, and aimed to isolate Russia from the global financial system. In response, the Kremlin implemented a policy of import substitution, seeking to reduce dependence on Western imports and promote domestic production. The sanctions and the subsequent economic adjustments underscored the resilience and adaptability of the Russian economy under Putin's leadership. While the sanctions had a significant impact, leading to a recession and a decline in living standards, the government managed to stabilize the economy and mitigate the worst effects. The focus on developing domestic industries and fostering economic self-sufficiency became a key theme of Putin's economic policy in the latter part of his presidency. As Putin's presidency continued into the 2020s, the economic challenges facing Russia remained significant. The need for diversification, innovation, and structural reforms was more pressing than ever, given the changing global economic landscape and the ongoing geopolitical tensions. The COVID-19 pandemic added another layer of complexity, affecting global markets and creating additional economic pressures. Despite these challenges, Putin's economic policies have left an indelible mark on Russia's development. His tenure has been characterized by a blend of market-oriented reforms and state intervention, aimed at achieving stability, growth, and geopolitical influence. The legacy of these policies is evident in the transformation of the Russian economy and the complex interplay between state and market that defines contemporary Russia. Understanding Putin's economic policies is essential to comprehending the broader trajectory of his presidency and the evolution of modern Russia. The balance between market forces and state control, the emphasis on strategic sectors, and the use of economic power as a tool of political influence all reflect the unique model of governance that Putin has crafted over the years. This model continues to shape Russia's economic and political landscape, with implications for both domestic development and international relations. Putin's foreign policy. Vladimir Putin's foreign policy has been a defining feature of his presidency, reflecting his vision of restoring Russia's status as a major global power. From the outset, Putin sought to assert Russia's influence on the international stage, counterbalance Western dominance, and protect the nation's strategic interests. His approach has been characterized by a blend of pragmatism, assertiveness, and, at times, confrontation, shaping Russia's relationships with key global players and its role in international affairs. A cornerstone of Putin's foreign policy has been his response to the expansion of NATO and the European Union into Eastern Europe and the post-Soviet space. Putin viewed these developments as direct threats to Russian security and influence. This perspective was particularly evident in his opposition to NATO's enlargement, which he perceived as encroaching on Russia's traditional sphere of influence. The NATO intervention in Kosovo in 1999, shortly before Putin assumed the presidency, further exacerbated these concerns and shaped his approach to the West. In the early years of his presidency, Putin sought to improve relations with the United States and Europe, recognizing the importance of these relationships for Russia's economic modernization and integration into the global economy. This pragmatic approach was evident in his support for the US after the September 11th attacks, where he provided logistical support for the US-led invasion of Afghanistan. However, this period of cooperation was short-lived, as tensions resurfaced over issues such as NATO expansion, missile defense, and differing approaches to international conflicts. The 2008 war with Georgia marked a significant turning point in Russia's relations with the West. The conflict, which erupted over the breakaway regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, highlighted the growing geopolitical competition in the post-Soviet space. Russia's military intervention and subsequent recognition of the independence of these regions were widely condemned by Western countries, but they also demonstrated Putin's willingness to use force to defend Russia's interests and assert its influence. This assertiveness continued to shape Russia's foreign policy in subsequent years. One of the most significant and controversial aspects of Putin's foreign policy has been his approach to Ukraine. The 2014 annexation of Crimea, following the ousting of Ukraine's pro-Russian president, Viktor Yanukovych, marked a dramatic escalation in tensions between Russia and the West. The annexation, which was condemned as a violation of international law, led to the imposition of Western sanctions on Russia and a deepening of the geopolitical divide. Putin justified the move by citing the need to protect ethnic Russians and Russian speakers in Crimea, as well as historical claims to the territory. The conflict in eastern Ukraine, where Russia supported separatist movements, further strained relations and highlighted the broader struggle for influence in the region. In response to Western sanctions and increasing isolation, Putin pivoted towards strengthening Russia's relationships with non-Western countries. This shift was particularly evident in the deepening economic and strategic partnership with China. The two countries expanded their cooperation in areas such as trade, energy, and military affairs, presenting a united front against perceived Western hegemony. The strategic partnership between Russia and China has been a key element of Putin's foreign policy, reflecting his broader goal of creating a multipolar world where no single power dominates. Putin's foreign policy also involved reasserting Russia's influence in the Middle East. The 2015 military intervention in Syria to support President Bashar al-Assad was a significant demonstration of Russia's willingness to project power beyond its immediate neighborhood. The intervention, which included airstrikes and military advisors, was aimed at stabilizing the Assad regime, combating terrorist groups, and preserving Russia's strategic interests in the region. The successful intervention bolstered Russia's position as a key player in the Middle East and underscored Putin's ability to influence global events. In addition to these high-profile actions, Putin's foreign policy has been marked by a series of diplomatic maneuvers and strategic alliances. Russia has sought to expand its influence in various regions, including Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, through a combination of economic investments, military cooperation, and political support. These efforts have been aimed at countering Western influence and building a network of partners and allies that can support Russia's global ambitions. Another significant aspect of Putin's foreign policy has been the use of information warfare and cyber operations. The Kremlin has been accused of employing a range of tactics, including disinformation campaigns, hacking, and election interference, to undermine adversaries and advance its strategic objectives. These actions have been aimed at sowing discord, weakening political institutions, and shaping public opinion in ways that are favorable to Russia. The allegations of Russian interference in the 2016 US presidential election and other Western democracies have highlighted the growing importance of cyber and information warfare in contemporary geopolitics. Putin's foreign policy has not been without its challenges and criticisms. His assertive actions and confrontational stance have led to significant geopolitical tensions and economic consequences, particularly in the form of Western sanctions. These sanctions have had a substantial impact on the Russian economy, limiting access to international markets and technology. Additionally, Russia's actions in Ukraine and Syria have drawn widespread condemnation and contributed to its international isolation. Despite these challenges, Putin's foreign policy has been driven by a clear vision of restoring Russia's great power status and countering perceived threats to its sovereignty and influence. His approach reflects a blend of traditional geopolitical thinking, pragmatic alliances, and modern tactics such as cyber warfare. The emphasis on state sovereignty, strategic interests, and the use of power to achieve national goals has been a consistent theme throughout his presidency. As Putin's leadership continues, the future of Russia's foreign policy remains a critical issue. The ongoing tensions with the West, the evolving relationship with China, and the challenges posed by global geopolitical shifts will all shape the direction of Russia's international engagement. Putin's legacy in foreign policy will be defined by his ability to navigate these complexities and secure Russia's position as a formidable and influential global power. The role of media and propaganda. The role of media and propaganda in Vladimir Putin's presidency has been a crucial element of his strategy to maintain control and shape public perception. From the early days of his presidency, Putin understood the power of media in influencing public opinion and consolidating political power. His approach to media has involved a combination of state control, censorship, and sophisticated propaganda techniques aimed at projecting a positive image of his leadership and promoting the Kremlin's narrative both domestically and internationally. Upon assuming office, Putin moved swiftly to bring major media outlets under state control or influence. This process began with the consolidation of state control over national television networks, which remain the primary source of news for most Russians. The takeover of NTV, a once independent television network known for its critical reporting, was a significant milestone in this effort. By 2001, NTV was brought under the control of Gazprom Media, a subsidiary of the state-owned energy giant Gazprom. This move signaled the Kremlin's determination to curtail independent media and ensure that national television served as a tool of state propaganda. State control over the media allowed the Kremlin to shape the narrative around key issues and maintain a positive image of Putin's leadership. Television news and political talk shows consistently portrayed Putin as a strong, decisive leader who was restoring Russia's stability and global standing. Coverage of opposition figures and dissenting voices was minimized or framed negatively, reinforcing the perception of Putin as the only viable leader for the country. This control over television, combined with the use of patriotic themes and historical references, helped to foster a sense of national pride and support for the government's policies. In addition to television, the Kremlin exerted influence over other forms of media, including print and online outlets. Independent newspapers and websites faced increasing pressure, with many being forced to close or adopt a more compliant editorial stance. Journalists and media organizations that were critical of the government often faced harassment, legal challenges, and, in some cases, violent attacks. High-profile cases, such as the murder of investigative journalist Anna Politkovskaya in 2006, underscored the dangers faced by those who challenged the official narrative. While state control and censorship were key components of Putin's media strategy, the Kremlin also employed sophisticated propaganda techniques to influence public opinion and achieve its objectives. The use of disinformation, strategic messaging, and psychological operations became central to the Kremlin's approach. This strategy, often referred to as information warfare, aimed to manipulate perceptions, create confusion, and undermine adversaries both within Russia and abroad. One notable aspect of this approach has been the use of troll farms and online disinformation campaigns. These operations involve large numbers of individuals and automated accounts disseminating pro-Kremlin messages, attacking opposition figures, and spreading false or misleading information. The Internet Research Agency, based in St. Petersburg, became infamous for its role in these activities, including its alleged interference in the 2016 US presidential election. The goal of these campaigns has been to shape online discourse, amplify divisive issues, and discredit critics of the Kremlin. Social media platforms have become key battlegrounds for Russia's information warfare. The Kremlin has leveraged platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to reach a global audience and propagate its narratives. These efforts have included the production of viral content, the creation of fake accounts, and the orchestration of coordinated campaigns to influence public opinion. The ability to reach millions of people quickly and effectively has made social media a powerful tool in the Kremlin's propaganda arsenal. In addition to online disinformation, traditional propaganda methods remain integral to Putin's strategy. State-run media outlets, such as Russia Today, RT, and Sputnik, have been used to project Russian perspectives and challenge Western narratives. These outlets, which broadcast in multiple languages, aim to reach international audiences and promote a positive image of Russia. They often highlight stories that depict the West in a negative light, emphasizing themes of hypocrisy, corruption, and social decay. By doing so, they seek to undermine trust in Western institutions and create a more favorable environment for Russian policies. The use of historical narratives and national identity has also been a key element of Putin's propaganda strategy. The Kremlin has promoted a vision of Russia as a strong, sovereign nation with a glorious past and a promising future. This narrative often draws on the legacy of the Soviet Union and the achievements of the Russian Empire, emphasizing themes of resilience, patriotism, and unity. Events such as the annual Victory Day Parade, commemorating the Soviet victory in World War II, serve to reinforce these themes and rally public support around the government. Education and cultural policies have been aligned with this broader propaganda effort. School curricula have been revised to emphasize patriotic education and portray a positive image of Russia's history and leadership. Cultural institutions, such as museums and theaters, have been encouraged to produce works that support the official narrative. The promotion of traditional values, including the emphasis on family, religion, and national pride, has been used to foster a sense of unity and loyalty to the state. While Putin's media and propaganda strategies have been effective in consolidating his power and shaping public perception, they have also had significant implications for freedom of expression and democratic governance in Russia. The suppression of independent media and the dissemination of disinformation have created an environment where dissenting voices are marginalized and critical debate is stifled. This lack of pluralism and open discourse undermines the democratic process and limits the ability of citizens to make informed decisions. Internationally, Russia's use of propaganda and disinformation has contributed to heightened tensions and distrust. Western countries have responded with efforts to counter Russian influence, including the imposition of sanctions, the development of strategies to combat disinformation, and the strengthening of cybersecurity measures. The ongoing battle for control of the information space highlights the complex and evolving nature of modern geopolitical conflicts. As Putin's presidency continues, the role of media and propaganda remains a central aspect of his strategy. The Kremlin's ability to control the narrative, both domestically and internationally, is crucial to maintaining its power and advancing its objectives. Understanding the mechanisms and impacts of this media strategy is essential for comprehending the broader dynamics of Putin's rule and the challenges faced by those seeking to promote transparency, accountability, and democratic governance in Russia. The military and national security. The modernization and strengthening of Russia's military and national security apparatus have been key priorities for Vladimir Putin throughout his presidency. Recognizing the importance of a robust defense capability for both domestic stability and international influence, Putin has invested heavily in transforming the Russian armed forces and enhancing the country's strategic capabilities. This focus on military power has been driven by a combination of geopolitical ambitions, security concerns, and the desire to restore Russia's status as a major global power. When Putin first assumed office in 2000, the Russian military was in a state of disrepair, plagued by underfunding, outdated equipment, and low morale. The chaotic transition from the Soviet era and the economic crisis of the 1990s had taken a heavy toll on the armed forces. Recognizing the need for reform, Putin embarked on a comprehensive modernization program, revitalizing the military and addressing its many deficiencies. One of the cornerstones of Putin's military modernization efforts has been the significant increase in defense spending. The Russian defense budget grew substantially during the 2000s and 2010s, allowing for the procurement of new weapons systems, the upgrading of existing equipment, and the improvement of training and readiness. This investment has resulted in the development and deployment of advanced military technologies, including fifth-generation fighter jets, modern tanks, precision-guided munitions, and sophisticated air defense systems. The modernization of Russia's strategic nuclear forces has also been a key priority for Putin. The development of new intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and strategic bombers has been aimed at ensuring the credibility and effectiveness of Russia's nuclear deterrent. High-profile announcements of new nuclear capabilities, such as the RS-28 Sarmat ICBM and the hypersonic Avangard glide vehicle, have been used to signal Russia's continued strategic prowess and deter potential adversaries. In addition to conventional and nuclear capabilities, Putin has placed a strong emphasis on developing asymmetric and hybrid warfare capabilities. This includes the enhancement of Russia's cyber warfare and electronic warfare capabilities, as well as the use of unconventional tactics such as disinformation, proxy forces, and economic pressure. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the conflict in eastern Ukraine highlighted the effectiveness of these hybrid tactics, which combine conventional military power with elements of information warfare and political manipulation. The restructuring and professionalization of the Russian military have been central to Putin's efforts to create a more capable and efficient force. Reforms have included the reduction of the bloated officer corps, the establishment of professional non-commissioned officer (NCO) ranks, and the improvement of training and discipline. The creation of elite units, such as the Special Operations Forces (SSO), has further enhanced the military's ability to conduct complex and high-stakes operations. The emphasis on readiness and rapid deployment capabilities has been demonstrated through a series of large-scale military exercises and drills. These exercises, often involving tens of thousands of troops and a wide array of military assets, have been used to test and refine the armed forces' ability to respond to various contingencies. High-profile exercises such as Vostok, Zapad, and Kavkaz have also served as a show of force to both domestic and international audiences, underscoring Russia's military capabilities and readiness. The strengthening of national security and internal stability has been another key focus for Putin. The consolidation of control over the security services, including the Federal Security Service (FSB) and the Interior Ministry, has been aimed at preventing internal threats and maintaining regime stability. The FSB, as the successor to the KGB, plays a central role in intelligence, counterterrorism, and counterintelligence operations, as well as in monitoring and suppressing political dissent. The fight against terrorism has been a major component of Putin's national security agenda. The early years of his presidency were marked by significant challenges related to the conflict in Chechnya and the broader issue of Islamist terrorism. Putin's response involved a combination of military action, political maneuvers, and efforts to address underlying social and economic issues in the North Caucasus region. The eventual stabilization of Chechnya and the reduction in terrorist attacks were seen as significant achievements of his leadership. The creation of the National Guard in 2016, a force directly accountable to the president, further enhanced the Kremlin's ability to maintain internal security. The National Guard's responsibilities include counter-terrorism, public order, and the protection of critical infrastructure. Its establishment reflected Putin's focus on ensuring the loyalty and effectiveness of the security apparatus in the face of potential domestic challenges. Internationally, Putin's military and security policies have been aimed at asserting Russia's influence and countering perceived threats from NATO and other Western powers. The expansion of NATO and the deployment of missile defense systems in Europe have been viewed by the Kremlin as direct challenges to Russian security. In response, Russia has conducted a range of military activities, including the deployment of advanced missile systems to Kaliningrad, the strengthening of forces in the Arctic, and the enhancement of naval capabilities in the Black Sea and Mediterranean. The involvement of Russian military forces in Syria has been a significant demonstration of Putin's willingness to project power beyond Russia's immediate neighborhood. The intervention, which began in 2015, was aimed at supporting the Assad regime and combating terrorist groups such as ISIS. The successful military campaign, which included extensive airstrikes and the use of advanced weaponry, highlighted Russia's growing expeditionary capabilities and its ability to influence outcomes in key regions. As Putin's presidency continues, the modernization and strengthening of Russia's military and national security apparatus remain central to his strategy. The emphasis on advanced technologies, strategic deterrence, and hybrid warfare capabilities reflects the evolving nature of contemporary conflicts and the need for Russia to adapt to new security challenges. Understanding these developments is crucial for comprehending the broader dynamics of Putin's rule and Russia's position in the global security environment. Putin's political reforms and governance. Vladimir Putin's approach to political reforms and governance has been characterized by efforts to consolidate power, strengthen the central authority, and ensure the stability of his regime. His tenure has seen significant changes in Russia's political landscape, with reforms aimed at centralizing control, limiting opposition, and creating a governance model that prioritizes stability and order over democratic pluralism. Upon assuming office, Putin inherited a political system that was marked by significant fragmentation and volatility. The 1990s had been a period of political turmoil, with frequent changes in government, economic crises, and the erosion of state authority. One of Putin's primary objectives was to restore order and strengthen the central government. To achieve this, he implemented a series of political reforms aimed at consolidating power and reducing the influence of regional and oligarchic interests. A key aspect of these reforms was the restructuring of the federal system. Putin moved to centralize control by appointing presidential envoys to oversee Russia's federal districts, reducing the autonomy of regional governors. The appointment of governors was later brought under the direct control of the president, effectively ending the practice of electing regional leaders. This centralization of power was justified on the grounds of enhancing national unity and preventing the disintegration of the Russian Federation. But it also served to tighten the Kremlin's grip on the political system. Electoral reforms were another significant aspect of Putin's political strategy. The introduction of a mixed electoral system for the State Duma, with a combination of proportional representation and single-member districts, was aimed at creating a more manageable and controllable legislature. Changes to election laws, including higher thresholds for party representation and restrictions on independent candidates, further limited the potential for opposition forces to gain significant footholds in the political system. The formation and consolidation of the ruling party, United Russia, have been central to Putin's governance model. United Russia has dominated the political landscape, consistently securing large majorities in the State Duma and serving as a key instrument of the Kremlin's control. The party's dominance has been facilitated by its access to state resources, favorable media coverage, and its ability to co-opt influential figures from various sectors of society. The role of United Russia has been to support the president's policies, maintain political stability, and marginalize opposition parties. The suppression of political opposition has been a defining feature of Putin's governance. Opposition parties and figures have faced significant obstacles, including legal challenges, administrative barriers, and limited access to media. High-profile opposition leaders, such as Alexei Navalny, have been subjected to arrests, imprisonment, and other forms of harassment. The Kremlin's approach to opposition is based on a combination of co-optation, repression, and the use of state resources to maintain a favorable political environment. In addition to formal political structures, Putin has relied on informal networks of power and influence to govern. These networks, often referred to as the power vertical, consist of loyalists within the security services, bureaucracy, and business elite who support the president's agenda and help maintain control. The relationship between the state and oligarchs has been reshaped, with Putin ensuring that major business figures are either aligned with the Kremlin or kept in check through legal and administrative measures. The Yukos case, which led to the arrest of oligarch Mikhail Khodorkovsky and the breakup of his company, served as a stark example of the consequences of challenging the central authority. The judiciary and legal system have also been brought under tighter control. Reforms aimed at increasing the independence and effectiveness of the judiciary have often been undermined by political considerations. The courts have been used as tools to enforce the Kremlin's will, with politically motivated prosecutions and selective enforcement of laws serving to neutralize opponents and maintain order. Putin's governance model has also emphasized the importance of stability and continuity. This has been reflected in the management of political transitions and the maintenance of a strong executive branch. The 2008 to 2012 period, during which Dmitry Medvedev served as president while Putin took the role of prime minister, demonstrated the Kremlin's ability to manage succession in a way that ensured the continuity of power. The subsequent return of Putin to the presidency in 2012 underscored the centrality of his leadership to the system. While Putin's political reforms and governance model have been effective in consolidating power and maintaining stability, they have also raised significant concerns about democratic governance and human rights. The erosion of political pluralism, the suppression of dissent, and the concentration of power in the executive have limited the scope for democratic participation and accountability. Critics argue that Putin's approach has created a system of managed democracy, where formal democratic institutions exist, but are heavily controlled and manipulated to serve the interests of the ruling elite. The long-term implications of Putin's political reforms and governance model remain a subject of debate. Supporters argue that his approach has brought much-needed stability, restored state authority, and enabled Russia to navigate a challenging international environment. Critics contend that the concentration of power, the suppression of opposition, and the lack of genuine democratic processes undermine the country's political development and risk creating a system that is overly dependent on a single leader. As Putin's presidency continues, the future of Russia's political system and governance will be closely watched. The ability to manage political transitions, address emerging challenges, and balance the demands of stability and democratic governance will be critical to the country's trajectory. Understanding the dynamics of Putin's political reforms and governance is essential for comprehending the broader evolution of the Russian state and its place in the global order. Thanks for watching.